Welcome to Retrograde Amnesia, a podcast series where we blend adolescent memory with contemporary reality in order to talk about Xenogears, which is a video game, in exhaustive detail. Hey, Eric.
Hey, Chris. What's up?
My name's Chris, by the way. I didn't identify myself as being this podcast, and for that I apologize.
Podcast professionals.
Yes, we've been doing podcasts for thousands of years.
9 years.
9 years we've podcasted at least twice a year. The first time we podcasted together, it was like, once a week, and then it became like every other week. And then
somebody had a kid, and then it was once a month, and then somebody had another kid, and then kids.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Also, our other podcasting partner was like an independent businessman who had like, the more he worked, the more money he got.
It's preposterous.
Weird.
For you and I, it's like we're off work and our paychecks are here. So that's good.
You heard him in episode 3.
You did. I actually sent him that clip, by the way. I don't know if he listened to it yet because he's been a little busy, but yeah. So we left off in a very precarious situation.
The boys were wrestling and fell into a cave.
In a sinkhole. This time, it's not a Camaro. You're staring off into the distance.
I had to dissociate really quick to figure out what the hell you were talking
about.
Yeah,
no one's going to know what I'm talking about. There was a, let's just bring this up real quick. There was a random sinkhole that appeared in the Corvette Museum in Bowling Green, Kentucky years ago.
You said Camaro, not Corvette, Chris.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, you fucked that up.
I'm not good at cars. I'm not good at remembering cars, and I'm not good at being able to describe music. Those are two of my weaknesses. So write those down.
Use them to destroy you. But no, Chris is right. The Corvette Museum had a sinkhole collapse, and all the expensive cars fell in it. And rather than fix it, they put glass over it, and now it's part of the display. Bowling Green, Kentucky, folks.
Whereas on the continent of Ignis, is that what we say it?
The Ignis continent.
The Ignis continent, which I don't know what language it is, but I think Ignis means fire. Did you know that?
Sounds similar to Icarus.
But anyway, we've fallen into a sinkhole after a giant robot battle, which is probably a phrase that has been uttered many times throughout the history of video games and anime.
Yeah, it's a good way to separate two characters.
Yeah. And Fei and his pirate, his Confederate, I guess we could call him. I was going to call him his adversary, but I guess now they are confederated together. Introduces himself as Bart.
Yes, it is the classic trope where two adversaries must work together to overcome a common problem.
And once he sees Fei, once he lays eyes on Fei and takes note of his appearance, I guess his backwoods outfit or his kung fu outfit.
We can assume he's a hick.
Yeah. He apologizes, sort of, for not believing that Fei is a Ave soldier. Because before their last battle, Fei was like, yo, we don't need to fight. I am just trying to get out of here. And Bart did not believe him. So Bart also indicates that he is the pirate that works this territory, which...
It's his turf.
His particular brand of piracy includes attacking military targets, apparently.
Yeah.
Which seems not smart,
no,
but...
Man, that's fuck the police. You know, the police have all the good guns. You want to attack them? If you can overpower them, you get the shotgun in the trunk. I've played GTA 3.
That's true. That's very true.
Did you have a note about where Fei thought he was going before the ship sank?
No.
Fei thought he was being sent to a, quote, concentration camp.
Oh, wow.
I guess those exist here.
I guess they do.
Men found wandering the deserts outside of Dazzle.
Yeah, I wonder if we ever get an indication of who is being concentrated in these camps.
We just may, Chris, later on in the story.
All right, Eric Uzuki.
Oh, yeah, nice.
You're fucking foreshadowing, motherfucker.
Yes. Blanca.
So we quickly... I guess after they come to a truce, they're like, we need to figure out how to get out of this fucking sinkhole.
They still have their giant robots, which are dwarfed by the size of this cavern that they're in. Yeah,
it's a large cavern. But we quickly flash to the ship where Citan has been rescued by the silver-haired pirate man.
And what's weird about this? They have some familiarity, right?
They do have some familiarity, and he refers to Citan as Hyuga.
Hyuga, yes, again.
Yes.
Sometimes Citan is referred to as Hyu, and then somebody trails off. It's like, oh, Citan, yes. Very good.
And again... Thank you, Citan, for the impending foreshadowing. But he says to the silver-haired pirate, whose name is not given yet at this point, I don't think
so.
This isn't a coincidence. Something is about to happen. So thank you, Citan, for telling us these more ominous things.
Yeah.
He's talking to this pirate man, and he is indicating that bad things or some types of things are about to happen in this world. And Citan seems to know about this because of his relationship with Fei and in the events that he's experienced thus far, and whatever plotting is going on in the background.
Chris, question.
Yes.
Have we met someone Citan doesn't know?
Ellie? Eric is giving an ominous smile. Thank you. Okay, well...
Well, from our perspective, he definitely knows what Ellie represents.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So there's been no mystery laid upon Citan. He's the unraveler of mysteries here for us. And yeah, I can't think of anybody he doesn't know.
Yeah, he's a worldly man. He's the man for all seasons.
He truly is. So now we're back to the cave.
Yes.
This is our first traversal with robots, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't think, you press L2 and R2 to get out of the robot whenever you want. But I don't know if that works down here.
I didn't try that. There's a couple moments later where it forces you to do so.
Yeah, to ride some cable cars.
Yeah. But they interestingly enough, the robots in these sequences are not 3D. They're sprites.
Yeah, they're sprites with multiple camera angles depicted when they rotate around.
Again, we have a moment of quiet traversal, which again...
Yeah, there's dripping noises in the background, but there's no explicit background music.
And this is really our first exposure to gear combat within the random battle ecosystem.
Yeah. What was the first fight you got in down there? Do you remember what you fought?
Yes, actually, I have that written down. And the characters, the enemies that we encounter here tell us a lot about what's going on down here.
Yeah.
The first thing that I encountered was called a medusoid.
Okay, yeah, the floating jellyfish thing.
Yes, floating jellyfish that makes a rather kind of a creepy screech when you kill it, right?
Yeah. There's some really good death noises in this game as far as the enemies that die. There's a lot of unique ones for each enemy.
And we're quickly exposed to the fact that we need to conserve fuel.
Right.
And just not go all out every time. The other things that what else is interesting about here in this cavern?
Well, my first battle was with something called a mayfly.
Yeah. Which,
before you've upgraded your gear, I spent, let's put... half my fuel fighting one of these stupid things.
Yeah, there's some wild shit down in the cave.
What does a mayfly look like to you, Chris?
Well, a mayfly appears to be a giant insect, but it has the ability to take over an unpiloted gear.
Yeah.
It also has a giant piece of celery growing out of his head.
Mm-hmm. And tentacle feelers.
Yeah.
It is parasiting, piloting this gear.
So, are we to believe that these giant mayflies can interface with the electronics of the gear, or are they just like putting all their tentacles into the body so they can move them around? Are they wearing it as a suit?
That's the medusoids have shown these creatures down here have electrical capabilities, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So perhaps it's animating it through electrolysis without any explicit way to control its weapons or its lifting abilities. It's using it as a raw mechanism to use violent force to do combat.
It's a really great touch. We've seen a lot in this game so far that the random encounters that we come across are not, for lack of a better term, random. They are things that exist in the ecosystems that we're in. It's not just I was about to say a dinosaur. I was about to say a dinosaur doesn't come running out of the woods, but actually a dinosaur did come running out of the woods. But let's just say there's not,
that dinosaur is not going to be down there.
Yeah, exactly. There seems to be a really great theming for all of the dungeons.
The wood elf that one-shotted Ellie is not going to be in this cave.
Yeah, and the things that are there feel like they're supposed to be there.
Someone thought about it.
Yeah, someone obviously thought about it, and I don't know if that's something that's always happened in your prototypical Final Fantasy-like up to this point. I don't know.
At this point, and not that I haven't paid attention to those games like I'm paying attention to this game, but Final Fantasy has a chest of trinkets they draw from and put in every time. So yeah. So sometimes they just don't feel like they're supposed to be there all the time, I think. And this game does a really neat job with it. Anything else? Not in this opening initial area.
There's a couple of, actually, there's one more encounter. Actually, there's two more encounter types here. There's a robot that appears to be automated that doesn't have a pilot, and if you don't attack it, it will heal you and refuel you.
It's a fix bot.
The fix bot.
But if you're full of HP and fuel, it will do like 15 damage.
Oh, okay. And there's also a Sandman.
Yeah. Sandman with like a kind of a brown robot helper gear. It's like, what are you all? Later we find a gear idling saying this is Ave excavation site number 8. Yeah,
there's things going on down here.
But like, why? You got to think it's like, this thing's mined. That's the one thing. I'm not going to say it doesn't make sense, but it's like, why are you guys? Can you guys get out? What are you guys doing down here?
Or did they come down with us when the sinkhole opened up?
That's a much better guess. Damn it. Why didn't I think of that? Yeah, no, I'm going to go ahead and go with that. That makes sense.
Or they could be, and like you said, you run into a couple of unpiloted gears that you can get information from?
Yeah, they tell you location data and stuff like that. So I picture even the helper gears is just, it probably, in my head canon, it costs the Ave excavation site more money to lift that shit out of there than to just leave it and get a new one.
And a little bit later, we're going to come across some mechanisms that we have to press to open the door.
Right.
And so
some
that
dungeon obstacles.
Yeah, but they are there for a reason. Like there's a door there. This is not just a cavern that you kind of press forward in. There's a door, and there is some.
There's a reason. There's
remnants of maybe some sort of civilization or something that was going on down here. It's all very for a cavern.
Yeah,
it's inspired. Like this is not just they didn't mail this section in just to.
It's a cave, but there's shit in the cave.
Yes,
kind of like earlier how it was a forest, but stuff happens in the forest.
Exactly. Bart is also sort of taken back by the fact that Fei wants to just try to move this boulder.
Yeah, no, this is our second encounter of a large boulder.
Yes, boulder number 2.
Like if you explore this whole room, I think there might be a chest or something. I don't remember, but
yeah.
The only point forward is revealed to be like a piece of the wall that isn't the same texture. So it is a boulder. Once
they push it out of the way, I think Bart sort of implies, or maybe outright says that Fei's kind of a dense person.
Yeah, it's like, you're not really grasping the enormity of this, are you?
And I agree with Bart here.
Well, Fei makes a good point. Fei wants to sit and wait for the cavalry, Bart's friends, right?
Yeah.
And what does Bart say?
Bart's like, they know I'm going to get out of here.
He says, we believe in a liberal upbringing. They'll think we can escape by ourselves. Which...
Is that really
I don't think that's liberal at all.
Yeah, I don't know if we're just...
maybe the polls shifted since 1998 once again.
Maybe a translation issue here? I don't know. Or maybe Bart, your friends don't want you to come back. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
You're always
maybe they're sick of your shit, dude.
It appears that Bart is getting his friends into trouble a lot. But, yes. I mean, his friends are also willing pirates, too. But these willing pirates, as we go back to that moment when they were scoping the Ave transport, originally, the pirates are not ill-equipped. These are not a ragtag group of people.
They have good technology.
Yeah.
They have computers in this world, man.
They've got computers and there's dragons. Whatever. So... there's also somebody living in this cave.
If you progress through this cave, there's some catwalks. You can get a whip for Bart's gear and a treasure chest up there. But then after 2 or 3 more screens of traversing through a fairly linear cave, you get to this waterfall outpouring with green pools. And one of it is a giant save thing. And then a door. And who is inside the door?
Well, there's an old guy. He's got long hair and he's got a portrait.
It is a portrait character.
And guess what his name is, Eric?
What's his name, Chris?
His name is Balthazar.
Holy shit.
So, there are 2 reads of Balthazar. One is that he is a reference to the character Balthazar from Chrono Trigger, which we know this game was originally developed in its planning stages as a Chrono Trigger 2. But I think the more likely read here is that Balthazar is one of the 3 magi.
What are magi, Chris?
Well, I'm glad you asked. And I'm glad that I went to a Catholic school.
Mm-hmm. Deliverers of gold, frankincense, and myrrh.
Yes. Balthazar, also known as Saint Balthazar, is traditionally referred to as the King of Arabia and gave the gift of myrrh to the infant Christ. In the Roman Catholic Church, he is regarded as a saint, as we said, as are all 3 magi. So if you're familiar with the birth of Christ story...
if you grew up in the 80s in suburban America, you certainly saw Balthazar in every 4th yard.
Yeah.
Participating in the birth of Christ.
Exactly. So he is basically one of the 3 wise men. And this man here living in the cave shares his name. So
he is boilerplate wise man portrait too.
Yeah.
If somebody's old and has long hair and lives by themselves in a cave, you are a wise man. You are definitely a wise man. And it's interesting. I don't think when I played this game originally that I thought that, or that I knew the names of the 3 wise men. I'm not sure. Because I probably didn't. We didn't have Wikipedia back then. Like, it was difficult for us. It would have been something, all the information that's out there on Xenogears now, we would have loved to have had that shit at our fingertips in 1998. I mean, GameFAQs existed then. It did. We had the internet, but it wasn't as easy as pulling it up on your phone. Or you didn't have a laptop. It's not immediate. You had to go connect to the internet and hope your mom doesn't pick up the phone. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was hard enough to get a game. But no, I'm pretty sure on my test then what their gifts were, and that there were 3 of them, were that their names were Balthazar, Melchior. Yeah, Melchior. And Ozzy, Flea, and Slash, obviously. Yes, exactly. Casper or Gasper, depending on.
Yeah, Gaspar, Caspar, depending on how the... I guess it's gone from whatever from Greek or whatever the New Testament was written in.
Yeah.
To Japanese, back to English. So I'm not actually sure how all these how all the names are.
It's intended though.
Yeah. So he collects fossils, by the way.
Here's the thing important to note. They walk into his humble abode. He doesn't see their gears, right? They just stumble in there.
Yeah, he doesn't see their gears till later.
Okay. But yeah, you're right. He is a collector of fossils. He says he's a FOSSICKER, a collector of things. And I looked that up on the internet just a second ago. And a FOSSICKER is in Australia, New Zealand, and Cornwall. Fossicking is known as prospecting, especially when carried out as a recreational activity. So it's your dumb guy. In American parlance, if you've ever been to the beach, you've seen some guy wearing a long sleeve shirt with a funny hat, wearing headphones with a metal detector, going along the shore for his entire time at the beach.
Yeah.
That's what this dude is, except he just lives in a cave and gets cave stuff.
And he got his name from the Bible.
Yeah,
they're skulls. A lot of these fossils are skulls.
My note is my dude has a skull collection.
Yeah, and Fei has a moment of insight here where he says...
Fei insight?
Huh?
Fei insight?
Yeah, exactly. It's weird. He says, essentially what I drew from Fei's banter here is that there is a gap in his skull collection.
Yes.
And there's a 10,000 year gap in the human existence on this planet.
Which makes me wonder if Balthazar also has radiocarbon dating.
I guess so. I mean, we will also come to find that he can easily upgrade and fix our gears later. So he's got some shit back there. This is not just a cave hovel.
I mean, it is. He's got like a bed on a raised piece of stone, one shelf full of skulls, kitchen of some sort, and a desk.
But apparently somewhere off screen, he's also got a factory of some sort.
This is off, not necessarily on the line we're on right now, but when I saw his cave and I was like, I would love to live in a cave with those amount of provisions by myself. That seems fucking awesome.
I mean, for 4 days, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you give me enough books, I'll forget about the internet. Like who cares? Free me. Please let me live in a cave. Do you have a cave?
I don't have a cave. I mean, this basement is as close as you're going to come to a cave, Eric. I think I have less windows in my cave than you do in your basement, though. So
you have two. Yeah, you're right. Double your. Okay,
yeah, at least in this particular room. So this 10-year gap in the fossil record. Let's not forget that we saw a spaceship earlier in the game fall to Earth. So I don't know if there were humans that existed before that spaceship crashed here, and we saw our mother-like figure
on this planet.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how that works out, but we are starting to get a sense of how the world came about. Did you note Balthazar's conversation about evolution?
Yeah, I have a lot. Bart asks if evolution isn't true.
Wait, before you go on, did he just say that?
I don't remember how it organically spawned. I think Balthazar has different shapes of skulls, right?
Yeah, I guess this is through the fossil conversation, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Apparently, the ethos teaches evolution, which is weird because that's the opposite of what our contemporary society does.
Yeah, that's true. The modern day, the modern day evangelical church preaches against evolution. I guess if you're the further...
Yeah, I'm not actually sure what the Catholic position is.
The Catholic position is evolution was a tool.
God's will?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a tool. So the Catholic Church... So if we're framing our conversations around the ethos... Is that what we're saying? Ethos?
I don't remember. Ethos.
Ethos is how we're saying it. If the ethos is... We're framing this around that the ethos is based on the Catholic Church, but I'm not necessarily sure if we're framing it around a modern Catholic Church, like a 21st century Catholic Church, or I think it's more so built around sort of a post-medieval Catholic Church.
Yeah, sure.
Where there's still some Dark Ages shit to be
reconciled.
Yeah, exactly.
I just thought it was ironic that the church teaches evolution, and Balthazar is like, no, man, I only believe in myths and legends.
Yeah.
I'm down here in the cave, dude.
I'm in the cave. I know what's
right.
Do not trust.
Do you have a skull collection?
Do not believe their lies.
Yeah, don't believe their lies.
Don't believe his lies.
Don't believe on his lies.
Yeah, part of the legends and myths that Balthazar alludes to are
the Omen music plays again here.
Oh, does it?
Balthazar is discussing myths.
Oh, well, of course. It has to, right?
Of course. Creation myths specifically.
humans and gods lived in a paradise in the sky.
Second time we've heard that.
And then goes real deep into, basically the Genesis story, the creation story. And do we need to, I guess, reset the creation story?
For Xenogears or for the Bible? The
Judeo-Christian creation story.
There's multiple creation stories, right? Like,
yes.
The snake's only in one of them or something?
Well, I'm just saying that, like, not everybody listening to this podcast went to Catholic school.
Set it up, Chris. Yeah, tell me what you remember from your institutionalized, forced brainwashing.
Well, the traditional reading of the Judeo-Christian creation myth is where God creates the world in 6 days and then consecrates the seventh day as a day of rest.
The Sabbath, of course.
Yes, the Sabbath. Keep holy on the Sabbath, by the way. So God creates Adam and Eve and says, live in paradise, which the emperor earlier was talking about paradise. We had a conversation last episode about the Garden of Eden. So Adam and Eve exist in the Garden of Eden without sin and sort of this blissful ignorance, almost this primordial.
Everything's perfect. They don't have Twitter. Everything's fine.
Yes. Actually, you know what? The Twitter might actually be the true knowledge of good and evil. I don't know.
Yeah, it is definitely the apple.
God says, here's the tree of life. No, not tree of life. The tree of knowledge of good and evil. It has fruit on it. Don't eat it. If you eat it, it's not going to be.
You guys can do whatever you want. Don't eat this fucking apple.
It's not going to be great.
Just don't. Please trust system.
A serpent, which is portrayed in the original interpretation of the creation myth as a trickster or a devil-like being.
Cobra Commander.
Stop surrendering and listen to me!
Yes, Cobra. Yeah, exactly. Starscream's voice.
A Decepticon never retreats!
Entices Eve into eating the fruit, and, she then entices Adam to eat the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. That is considered the fall of man. And
it's
God,
also a foundational argument for chauvinists.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the weak, the quote unquote weak woman was the one that was
got us expelled from paradise.
Yeah, they got us expelled basically, and then God throws them out and curses them to an existence of Adam, you're going to sweat, you got to work, and Eve, it's going to hurt to have kids.
And Adam was ashamed of his balls.
Yeah, that was also the moment in which humans became aware of their existence. Different, their existence is different than the existence of an animal, so they became ashamed that they were naked, and all that shit is in the Bible. Please refer to the Bible if you would like to read this story. So Balthazar is talking about forbidden fruit, incredible wisdom, and all of these, making very explicit allusions to the creation story. But then he adds a layer. He says,
that God buried himself deep beneath the ocean to sleep for eons.
Well, but that was after man created giants.
Oh, right.
To slay God.
Yep.
And then he slumbers in the ocean, and then I think there's an implication at the tail end of this conversation that after God was defeated by giants.
Yeah, weird that there's giant things.
Giants. Maybe not. Balthazar did not say that they were giant robots, but.
Jeez, what other giant could there be?
So. There's also an implication that the slumbering God in the ocean created a sort of obedient human.
A little bit.
Thereafter. And I'm not quite sure if after God was defeated or put in the ocean or whatever happened, if the descendants of God at that point were these people that we're interacting with, were Fei, Citan, all of their contemporaries.
Even if this planet is from that ship, there can be a creation myth independent of whatever happened on that ship. Like, they have no idea what the fuck a spaceship, an interplanetary weird thing is, right? Like, as far like the very origin of foundational religious testimony is relying on faith. So you can kind of just do whatever you want, and if the information persists over a long enough amount of time, it can become exalted and worshipped and thought upon as gospel. So theoretically, that's what could have happened here, but when God made their ancestors before taking a nap.
Yeah, exactly. And there's two ways to read Balthazar's his regurgitation of the traditional creation myth plus giant robots.
Yeah. How do we get giant robots in this creation myth?
Well, you could look at it from an orthodox perspective, which I think is probably the perspective that you and I looked at it when we originally read this. Although I don't even recall this character at all.
Balthazar?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've forgotten.
When I sat down to play this section of the game, I was like, I'm going to run through this cave and fight a boss.
I remember there being a gear shop in a cave.
Yeah, that's it. And, but I would suspect that my 16, 17-year-old brain would have read this and be like, oh, he's talking about humans using science and losing sight of God and defeating God and de-emphasizing structured religion. And that's the analog here from what he's talking about. But I think what's really going on here is that we're looking at a Gnostic parable almost in the way Balthazar is communicating this. Because if you read the creation story as a Gnostic Christian who were sort of a different sect of Christianity who was more transcendental, for lack of a better term, they were more about looking within to try to contextualize biblical narrative and biblical myth. And
so they did acid.
Yeah, that's a better way to explain it to somebody who may not be familiar with.
I mean, not really doing
Gnostics.
acid, but like from that perspective.
So gaining incredible knowledge and building giants and defeating this traditional jealous god really seems to be a reference to the Gnostic rejection of the Israeli or the Judeo-Christian Old Testament God. And the fall of man is not necessarily where, God punished humans and sent them away and caused them pain, but the fall of man in the Gnostic, the way a lot of Gnostic texts portray the fall of man is simply that this is where we gained our knowledge of good and evil and became different from animals, and we are no longer innocent and we're no longer ignorant. We have become as gods, as we saw.
Good tie-in.
We saw that in the flashback to the intro scene when the ship was crashing. It popped up on the screen in front of the captain. I believe it said, "You shall be as gods," and that is a very specific phrase that the serpent utters to Adam and Eve to indicate that if you eat the fruit of knowledge of good and evil, then you will become as gods. And the orthodox interpretation is becoming as gods is not a good thing. God will fuck you up and send you out of here if you do that. Whereas the Gnostics are like, we want knowledge. Like gnosis is the word gnosis, I believe, means knowledge or something of that, or inner knowledge or something of that.
It's more of like a broad philosophical point of view and a greater sense of self and consciousness.
Exactly. And so, in some Gnostic interpretations of the creation myth allude to an existence higher than the Old Testament God. In many ways, the Gnostic texts reject the notion of the Old Testament, the angry, the xenophobic God who was like about
the bloodthirsty God.
Yeah, well, bloodthirsty is probably stronger than xenophobic there.
The foreskin collecting God.
Yes, exactly. And so a lot of these Gnostic interpretations allude to this higher existence God that is not the
concerned
God
with blood and foreskin.
Yeah, and in this case, maybe the God that is trapped or slumbering in the ocean.
Sure.
So the God that has been slumbering in the ocean, that has been sent back by these giant robots that humans have created to, as a result of their knowledge, they have sent that angry, that wrathful God into the ocean, slumbering, and then I guess they have maybe found ways to interface with this higher plane, this higher existence that is not explicitly mentioned in the Bible, but maybe is alluded to in Gnostic texts.
An interesting question you can ask about that, and about a lot of situations with no clear definable answer. And Chuck Klosterman wrote a book about this called What If We're Wrong? And the implications of what that could mean about widely held beliefs.
Yeah.
So that's one way to look at what he's saying and how this world operates and how you could turn it all on your head if you've got one crucial piece of information backwards or wrong, or you don't understand it fully. Yeah.
I think the best scholar, I guess, I mentioned this before, but Xenogears, and it may have been not until I played Xenosaga, but that inspired me to read about Gnosticism and the Gnostic Gospels. The best scholar that you can, if you want to read a book about the Gnostic Gospels or any sort of Gnosticism, there is an author you can look up, Elaine Pagels, I think is her name, and that's where I pulled a lot of this information from. And I didn't bring it down here tonight, but
you kept the book. Like, I'm sure you've purged materials at some point in your life, and surely it made an impact for you to keep it around.
Yeah, it just we were, especially as growing up in the Catholic community, we were taught a certain way. Mm-hmm. And when you're first introduced to other ways of thinking about, the scripture or other things of that nature, then it's
attractive.
Yes, exactly.
Dude, when I found out there were deleted scenes from the Bible, books that didn't make it in, that blew my mind, because no one in Catholic school ever even told me that was a thing. Probably not until high school, at least.
Yeah. Deleted scenes from the Bible is actually the best way to describe the Gnostic Gospels. Yeah,
absolutely. It's not canon.
So then,
we move.
we moved from this conversation to Balthazar saying, "Oh, you need to go flip some switches for me."
Well, no, he uses he kind of tells you how gears work, right? Like he gives you some basic explanation because he sells parts. So I guess he does know you travel by gears, but maybe he expects that you have generic gears. I loaded up on parts before he sent us on this journey.
I didn't do it till at the end, till I got back.
Oh, well,
so yeah, go ahead.
Oh, so he explains that he talks about engines. The gear engine, which is the part you can buy, controls attack power and fuel capacity. The frames you can buy control hit points, and the armor that you buy controls your defensive stats. And once I bought all 3 of these items for all 2 of my gears down there, I beat the shit out of mayflies.
See, this was I think this was my problem, is that I did not upgrade my gears.
Oh, really?
Until after I went back. So he sends you on a quest.
Yes.
To disable 2 switches so that he can open this door.
And you can progress.
So this is when we're first introduced to the fact that part of this cave is not natural. It's man-made. It's an excavation site.
Yeah. Man have been carving this thing out.
Yeah. And there's a door. We need to flip a couple of switches.
It's a blast door, basically.
Yeah. And there has something to do with
sand flow.
Something like that, yeah. And I liked the space, too, because we're not ushered in a straight line. We've got to do a little backtracking. We got to do a little platforming.
Yeah, you get a new area. Gears jump taller than people, too.
Yeah, and also, I think this is the opportunity, or the chance...
So you didn't buy anything here? I guess, if you didn't have funds, if you were not killing desert men outside of Dazzle for an hour and a half, you didn't have the capital necessary to upgrade your shit.
I did when I got back, but not the initial time. I did find the iron G-whip along the way.
Yes, that was the item. That's parts upgrade. Do you feel a little unfair when you're in your gear and you're fighting the 4 Ave soldiers in the one gear that you just basically, you punch them with your fist and they die in one hit?
Yeah, that makes me sad a little bit.
Yeah.
But also...
You waste a turn. Well, you can kill 2 of them at the same time.
You should be able to.
Yeah. It's like, dude, you've got a whip. Just hit them all at once, man.
I don't know if this game ever really fully figures out a way to deal with the 2D small enemies and the large enemies without, there's never any moments when you have to strategically get out of your gear and fight things and then get back in your gear.
Not here, but later in the game, I believe there's stuff like that.
Well, I'll be excited to see that because I don't remember that, because I feel like here when you run...
Here you get out of your gear at some point later to go in a cable car, and there's 3 steps that you could take where you theoretically could get in a random battle, but when you're in battle, you can do summon gear and you can shoot up in it like a Power Ranger.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I guess I just wish there was more of that.
So does Balthazar send you off to do this objective, and then when you get back, they have more of a longer conversation? My notes aren't exactly thorough here. Because is this where Bart talks about the god gear? Or is it after you flip these switches? Yeah,
well, you go back and you tell Balthazar that you flip the switches.
Yeah.
And then Bart, for some reason, I don't know what the reason is.
He's been thinking about myths and legends.
He has been thinking, yeah. As pirates do.
Yeah.
As blonde pirates do.
Yeah, Pirate's the number 1 creator of fantasy fiction in the 17 and 1600s.
Sure, why not? He needs to ask about the god gear.
Yeah.
And
a superior gear called the god gear, capital letters, made in ancient times and hidden away somewhere.
And somebody refers to the god gear as the Omni gear.
Yeah, somebody actually says Omni gear.
I'm not sure which character said that. And Balthazar talks a little bit about that, but doesn't really reveal anything.
Oh, no, it is
additional.
I have the Omni gear quote. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
Bart asks about that, and Balthazar says, "A man-made god, created with the wisdom of a god. Such a gear would have the power of 1,000 gears. In a wave of its arm, it could destroy whole cities. Its battle cries would thunder in the heavens. You must be speaking of the Omni gear." Then Balthazar calls Bart an idiot for believing in legends, despite being a man who believes in legends.
Yeah, I picked up on that too, and it's funny too that you say that a gear built with the knowledge of a god. Is that how you said it?
Yeah.
Which again traces back to the
wisdom of a god.
Yeah, the wisdom of God, the forbidden fruit, etc. Then I think Balthazar walks away to go flip the switch or whatever he's got to do.
Yeah.
And Fei and Bart start musing about, well, what if one of our gears is one of the gears that is of legend?
Huh. What do you think? Do you think Balthazar, when he said legends were bullshit, was trying to throw them off the trail on that because he had just said he believes in legends?
Either that or it's just a translation. Yeah. I don't know.
Chris and I went to a website. I don't have it on hand right now, but this game, some translation stuff is pretty hastily done, not entirely accurate.
I mean, it was a huge project, right?
It was a huge project. I listened to an interview on it, and the gist of it was a lot of people quit during this.
Oh, God.
And it was so bad that it kind of set the stage for how Square localized stuff in the future.
Yeah, there's a lot here, and I can't imagine just trying to backtrack on what text or what reference the Takahashi was trying to make.
Yeah. And you get the raw text files with no no visual for what you're doing. And you've got an Excel, you have a spreadsheet with one thing here and one thing there. And it's like fucking, you can't even get a rough, I bet you have to hand do a translation. You couldn't translate on, was Babelfish around at that point?
I think Babelfish was around, but it wasn't
It's even worse than it is now.
Yeah. A lot of times translations are credited to a single person.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's...
There's a lead, and then there's usually it's 2 or 3 people at this point in time, right? I could be wrong about that. I know Ted Woolsey did all of 6 in Chrono Trigger by himself.
Yeah, but I feel like now there are entire organizations dedicated to localization and translation.
Absolutely.
Wasn't that interview you listened to from 8.4?
It was from 8.4 Play, and they do localization.
Yeah, so there's whole...
Their company structure,
businesses built around localizing games for different territories, and that also have a hand in, the marketing and things of that nature. Whereas before I was like, hey, guy that speaks this language, do this.
Yeah.
So, and also now games are localized it's not just to a Western English speaking audience. They're localized to
multiple languages.
Multiple languages now. So it's more, it feels like nowadays it's more of a process, because you see a lot more Japanese games coming out pretty quickly.
Yeah, it was still foundational at this point. Yeah, you used to have to wait 6 months to a year for a game to come out. And now, even with the Yakuza games, they're getting closer and closer all the time.
Yeah, and it still happens. It still happens a lot more now. We have to wait because of, especially now because there's more spoken dialogue in games.
Right.
But even back then, with the game like Xenogears, there's so much text and so much esoteric allusions to different works of religion and other things. Then it's just a matter of time before a project like that just fucking falls on its face. So I guess we should consider Xenogears a minor miracle that this game got released.
That it came out and still had a profound effect. It could it have been better? Absolutely. But is what's here a miracle of its time? Yes, also true.
So let's preface any conversations we have about the translation being bad.
We know.
Going forward, that we still appreciate the fact this game came out because of
if the alternative is not coming out, then they made the right choice. I think Balthazar comes back, right? And then Fei asks about old records.
Yeah, Bart starts talking about how there's no records of history for the past 100 years or so.
Or those that do exist are controlled by the ethos.
Yes, and guess what? The ethos, as we've learned, is the church. And again, we have a reference to, sort of the Dark Ages Catholic Church destroying records or whatever.
Yeah, I get... Xenogears seems like it's Bronze Age sometimes in its technology. It kind of jumps around from the period of human history with which it draws from with its people.
It's weird. So are we ready for Balthazar to walk outside and look at the gears to tune them up?
Yeah, he kind of has an episode.
So we get this...
Oh yeah, we forgot earlier. Balthazar heard Bart's gear and said it had a hydraulic...
He basically said there's some issue with the hydraulics and...
A new hydromechanic pipe.
Yes, and
its joint.
Earlier in the scene where Fei and Bart were pushing the boulder out of the way, Bart protested that because he's like, I've got a fucked up hydraulic pipe.
Like we just fell 53 through a cave.
So
pure
yeah,
stone.
and this is a let's give the translation credit here because they used the same term that Bart used and the same term that Bal used.
They matched it up.
And
good job, guys.
And then that was a tell that Balthazar knows about gear shit, basically.
Yeah. He spoke truth.
So he walks outside and sees the gears because he's going to give him a tune-up or whatever. Mm-hmm. And there's this scene where what is it? Kind of like flash? Like
the screen flash is red.
Red, okay.
Or for me, it was red, right? It was like a spell that he was having. He was overcome with instinctual emotion.
And we have the text go across the screen and it's not necessarily in a text box.
Yeah, it's just free-floating text.
In front of it. And he says, he's looking at the Weltall and he says, the host for the spirit of the slayer of God.
Yes. And when text breaking out of a text box, it's important.
Yeah, and there might be some ominous heartbeats or something in the background here. I'm not really sure. But he won't elaborate on that comment. And,
no, he says, this is a bad time for me. Be on.
Yeah, it's a bad time for me too, Bal. Trust me. We've already had Groff talk about the slaying God or killing God or whatever. We've had the creation myth +1 where Balthazar talked about how humans built giants and killed God and sent him into a slumber, etc. So are we to believe now that the Weltall is the vehicle for doing such?
I mean, when people see him who knows what it is, it's like they've seen like Satan or something like that.
Yeah.
Like something that strikes fear into their heart, no matter how educated or learned they are about this world. It's like they've seen something that shouldn't exist. You know, it's like if Mothman was on top of my car when I left out here, right? Like whatever weird cryptid that I happen to subscribe belief in.
The Poplik monster is traversing our neighborhood. I
don't know if you ever got to start reading Childhood's End, but there's a very particular image about the revelation of the nature of the overseers that's into that line of thinking as well.
I've read about maybe 15% of that book or so.
So it's still in
it's still
the time jump hasn't happened.
Yeah, it's still in the initial portion. And you know, maybe we have a conversation sometime about...
It's a good mystery box. It's what do the overseers look like is a tantalizing question in that book.
And that's, I mean, this is not explicitly how this game plays out, but this game is throwing mystery threads at us to pull at and try to figure out what's going on. And, you know, as we'll see later, I think there's some explicit references to Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke.
Very explicit.
If there's enough there, if there's enough meat on that bone, then a sidebar podcast about that book. And
absolutely.
This game.
Yeah, it's a short book. It's like 250 pages.
Yeah, we could talk about how that book influenced this game a little bit, maybe for one of our Patreon podcasts or something.
Sure.
Forward.
So after he said, this is a bad time for me, be on, did you go in progress or did you drop back in his cave hovel?
I just went on.
So the first time I played this game, I just went on. And then you fight a boss at the end, spoilers. This time I went back in because I'm trying to be more thorough. And Balthazar says he still sells you more gear parts, but he says something very specific that I think changes the nature of this boss. He says, when Calamity beats you, I'll just get all these parts back anyway.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So he knows Calamity is there.
He knows Calamity is there.
Spoiler alert, Calamity is the next boss.
Yeah. Which leads me to believe he's either responsible for its creation or knows what you're walking into and is set to harvest upon your bullshit. Does that recontextualize things for you?
It does, because I thought of Calamity as maybe this Ave gear or whoever's control an ethos gear that was controlling this area, because we know there's excavation being going on here.
Calamity is a prototype for a gear we will run into later.
Yeah, that's true. It does look a lot like something that I remember in my brain head. So wow, that sort of knocked me off.
I'm glad there's dialogue that accounts for that kind of stuff, that rewards the player, because it's one of those games where every NPC will say something if you approach them, even if there's 100 of them on the screen, and that they thought to just name drop Calamity right there.
Yeah,
pretty good.
There's some thought going in this game, because sometimes when you think back upon this game, you think about how crazy it gets in the grand scope of things. But I think that because of that, we as appreciators of this game forget about the smaller moments and the smaller pieces of connectedness in this game.
Yeah.
Like we forget about Big Joe and Franz and all the charm this game has. Mm-hmm. Things that we hold in high regard for games like Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, games from that time frame, because they had all these little moments that held the game together or tied it together, and we don't remember those things at least we don't appreciate. You remember
some of them.
Yeah.
You know what the Enertron is for the rest of your life from Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, but I don't think that happens as much with Xenogears, because whenever you talk about Xenogears, like, oh, fucking giant robots.
There's giant robots. There's also an embarrassment of riches of weird shit. Like, there's so much happening, it's tough to isolate one as being like the weirdest, the king weird of all of it. Yeah,
that's true. So hopefully we can do that in the course of this podcast. So I think we've traversed and gotten out of our gears briefly to...
Yeah, you have to go ride some cable cars, throw another switch.
And then we encounter the Calamity. Night of Fire, bitch.
Night of Fire again. Calamity is a giant big gear with twin boosters on its back. It's gray in color, almost like a model that wasn't painted ever. Silver. It's more silver than gray.
Yeah, it appears to be. It's very bulky in nature.
My note is my large adult son, Calamity.
Yeah, it is the large adult son of like the Ave, the standard Ave gear.
Yeah.
The standard gears that we've seen, because it's got big shoulder pads and giant rocket arms.
It's definitely your heavy.
Yeah, it definitely is. He's got torpedoes. He's got hammer arm, which is a Pokemon move.
He can detach his fist and punch you with it from across the room.
Yes, rocket hands, everything.
This guy fucked me up the first time I played this game.
You mean this time or the last time?
Last time.
Yeah, I remember this being hard.
It was very difficult.
This was the first sort of vivid boss encounter that I had that it was difficult.
Yeah.
But this time, and I don't know, I'm not really sure. I did upgrade all my gears, or my 2 gears.
I probably didn't do that the first time I played it.
Yeah, I probably didn't
didn't
either.
have the funds.
Also, I discovered boosters this time.
What are boosters? Do we explain that yet?
I think we talked about it briefly in the Rankar dragon battle or whatever, but you can use them to expend more fuel. But
yeah, you can get more fuel for like 3 or 4 turns. Yeah.
And every gear battle at this point has just been a race against...
You cast haste.
Yeah, and every battle we've had thus far is just like do enough damage to the enemy before you run out of fuel or die.
Yeah.
And so it makes...
And you can't heal gears at this point, right?
No, you can't.
Right.
And so it makes total sense to go ahead and just use those boosts, especially if you are anticipating this is the last battle of this section. So when I did
this game does pull fast ones where it throws a boss, it does the JRPG thing where you think you're fighting a boss and then oops, there's another boss after it.
Good to know,
So
because
you can't ever tell when that's going to happen with this shit.
So it's extremely advisable to use booster here, though.
Yeah, I beat him easily. Also booster, Bart's Wild Smile casting evasion on him.
Yeah.
He really neuters him. It takes away most of his weapons.
It essentially gives you 2 or 3 extra turns before you die, but you don't even need that many if you are upgraded here.
I didn't even come close to dying this time.
But this is probably the first gear battle that we've had, or gear boss battle that we've had where we have to actually employ some strategy and not just
beat
combos.
ass. Yeah, you got to think about it.
I would suspect if you didn't upgrade your gears and you don't use booster mode, you will have some trouble here. Yeah, or Wild Smile. Yeah, you'll have some trouble here.
If you just try to fight him by hitting your 30 fuel attack every time, it's going to be a long road.
After they beat him, Bart briefly tries to bro it out with Fei a little bit. He's
proud.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, good battle here, buddy. But Fei doesn't really seem to give a shit. He's actually sort of silent.
Fei's still reluctant fighting.
Yeah, he is. He's still... I think maybe he has a purpose now because he wants to understand maybe his nature or what's going on. But he's not gung-ho about this situation.
I mean, think about it. You're in a gear that's just kicking all kinds of ass. And whenever people who know better see it, they get freaked out. People that appear to be unshakable.
Yeah.
So there's that. But I mean, you beat it, but then what happens?
Well, you beat him and Calamity starts to wake back up.
Yeah,
and then Fei
reactivates.
Fei gets the heartbeat.
Dun, dun.
Yeah. And then I read this originally as like the heartbeat starts and he's sort of snapped back in his violent state or whatever.
Yes.
And his violent state gives him the ability to do like sick combos on dudes.
He does bicycle kicks.
Yeah, he does all kinds of shit. And he appears to be blocked out, but because he's got all these moves that he didn't have before. And he fucks up Calamity and then it's dead. Or blows up.
It turns to dust.
So
he liquidates that thing.
Does Calamity have a pilot?
I don't know.
I don't think
I do know, but I don't know we don't know for the purposes of this.
Okay. So then we traverse towards the end of the cave and there is dubiously a highway at the end of the...
Well, also Bart asks Fei, he's like, yo, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
And Fei's like, I don't know.
Yeah, Fei's just kind of, he's stoic here.
Yeah, he's like, this happens, sometime blackout, people, whatever.
People die.
Has Fei told Bart about Lahan yet, or is that happening?
No.
Okay.
No.
But they see a road, right?
Yeah, there's a highway, and you've got a platform around it, and
asphalt.
I'm like, so... Civilization down here before, maybe? Okay.
Well, yeah, no, Ave's been excavating this. I'm sure there was like a minecart path or some kind of process for getting the materials out.
And once they get out, Bart says he's like, oh, I'm not ready to settle my score with you. Bart's got this Vegeta thing where he needs to beat Fei in a battle because of his pride, I guess.
Yeah, well, now that you're safe, you can go back to being adversaries. Now that your common goal has been achieved, you can resume previous roles.
But Fatima, is that how we say it? Fatima?
Let's talk about Bart's last name. It's Bart Fatima.
Do we know that yet?
I thought you just said that.
No.
Oh, yeah, you're right. My bad.
There's a city.
Yeah.
So Bart says he's not ready to settle the score because Fatima is so close. And then the scene fades out and we get a brief moment where Fei and Bart are picked up by as we come to learn, the ship, Bart's ship is called the Yggdrasil.
Right.
Which I've not done proper research on, but I believe this is
it's Norse.
It's like
a
tree of life.
Tree of life, yeah.
So let's limit ourselves to Judeo-Christian mythology. We've got to pull some more shit in here too. Don't worry. There's plenty of other religions to come into the play here. And we meet Mason and Sigurd. Mason is the butler. Sigurd is...
Old Mason.
Old Mason?
His name's Old Mason.
Oh, fuck.
Sometimes it says Mason, but Bart always calls him Old Mason with old being capitalized.
Oh, it's probably... Okay, yeah, I can think of the Japanese word that they use in that case.
They probably localized that weird.
Yeah.
And then Sigurd is the guy that looks like Bart with silver hair with a different eye patch.
Yeah. Is it on the opposite eye?
Yes.
It is? Okay.
That's explained next chapter.
Okay. And then I think the chapter ends with Citan telling Fei that he looks kind of sad or down or something.
Yeah, Fei's not if he's like, oh, of course Citan's here with these dudes.
Yeah.
With this guy that looks just like this fucking guy and this old British dude with the neckerchief thing, very well dressed, pocket watch looking motherfucker.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on here. It's weird.
He's an indentured servant.
I don't know exactly where this chapter ends, but
I think it's here.
It's here. You run to the save point, you save it, you're on a new chapter. So then we'll pick up with the exploration of the Yggdrasil.
Yggdrasil and Pirate's Lair next episode.
In next time, yes. It'll be fun. So thanks. Thank you, Eric, for joining me on this wonderful day where we talked about Xenogears in my basement for roughly 2 hours here.
It's a happy Sunday.
It's a good Sunday. It's always a good Sunday when you can talk about Xenogears. Thank you to the listeners for listening to us today. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/retroam. Follow us on Twitter at retroamnesiapod. Email us stuff and things and whatnots to retrogradeamnesiapodcast@gmail.com, and we will read and respond to your comments in the future when they become applicable to our conversations. And review us on your favorite podcast application, such as Apple Music, Google Play, Spotify, whatever we're on. We don't even know what we're going to be on yet, but we'll be on most things. And thank you to Mark Shepard for the intro track. It sounds rockin' and wonderful and great. Don't visit us on Facebook because we're not there. Until next time.
Yes, we will kill God.
And now, go back to sleep. Everything I said was comprehensible, so that's good. We're old now, man.
Initializing fake net.